Imagine this. Your thoughts, your beliefs, your feelings. This is your house. But is it your home? Hi, I'm Nelson DeMello, and join me as we try to find our home beyond our borders. I don't know. I think that's fine.
Yeah, that's a good take.
We got to keep it moving. Okay, so Exodus 15 to 18, God is just taking care of these Israelites in the desert. They're complaining. It's not that absurd. I mean, look, we read it and you're like, oh, bread is falling down from heaven and these quail are just waiting to be killed and everything is good and dandy. Your clothes is literally growing with you, you know? You're being completely taken care of. How dare you complain? But dog, my what? No, I'm just kidding. No, but there's people that just can't eat the same thing like 2 days in a row. So you can't blame them, you know? Like, yeah, sure. And you're like, oh, but it must taste so good and it's perfectly nutritious and da-da-da. I mean, look, sure, yeah. But that a lot of people would get tired of a lot of things real fast. I, luckily, am not that. Usually, like, okay, this is a sidebar. Usually, you know, you try to put yourself as the hero, right? Like, we see ourselves as the David fighting Goliath and this and that. And, like, I think this is good wisdom, and I've heard this preached, and this is super important. But, like, in that story of David and Goliath, for example, we're the brothers. We're the ones mocking him. Like, what are you going to do for me? Like, yeah, go away, go home, you know? Or the Israelites that are cowering and fearful of Goliath. Like, that is us. Jesus is David. He's the one that takes on Goliath for us. Like, that's the metaphor there. And we tend to put ourselves as the hero of the story. We're not the heroes. But in this story, I am the hero. I would be the guy eating, happy, and you're like, what? You are the creative type. How can you have something so mundane in your life? And I'll tell you this. If I could, I would wear the same clothes, eat the same thing every day, have the same exact schedule every day. And you're like, what? That's not creative whatsoever. And I would say, if I don't have to think about those things, I have more time and more energy to spend to think about the things that do matter, right? So this podcast, like, I could think about how the Bible relates to us and all these symbols and all of these analogies. I don't have to be thinking about if I want pancakes or eggs for breakfast. You know what I mean? So if I have everything situated and like taste, dude, like, I don't know, like, it's food is food, man. You just put it down your throat, eat it, you stop being hungry. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's not that deep for me. I'm not crazy. Like, yeah, bad food is bad food, but like decent food is decent food and good food is good food. I don't know. I've never had like any excellent food that's just made me like, oh my goodness, I would pay $150 for this again. I've never paid $150 for food, and nor will I ever. Okay, well, point is, I'm the good guy, you're the bad guy. That's the point. No, I'm just kidding. But it's just this thing, like, we see it and we're like, oh, that's absurd. Like, the quail just waits there for you and the food just literally comes down from heaven and you're complaining. That's one aspect. Another aspect, which I think is so powerful and so cool, is they couldn't grab food for 2 days in a row, right? And they tried, which, I mean, speaks to the whole, you can take a man out the hood, but you can't take the hood out the man. You know what I mean? Like, you can take a man out of slavery, but you can't take the slavery out of the person. And ultimately, that's why it took a whole generation to die for them to go to the promised land, is because you just can't take, like, there's just too much trauma. There's too much attachment. You know, this idea of like when rich, successful people are still hoarding stuff. It's like, dude, you have the money to replace things. Like, why are you still holding on to all these things? It's attachment, bro. They grew up in poverty. They grew up, you know, every meal could be your last. You know what I mean? Like, that's the mentality that they grew up in. You can put them in a completely different situation. They're going to act the same way. They're going to have that. I love when movies like have like that kind of comedic element to that, where, you know, it's like a kid, like a person, you know, leaving a restaurant and they put ketchup packets in their pocket or something like that. That's so funny to me because it's like real, you know, like that's what we do. But it's that thing. And, but God is strict, and he's like, no, you're going to trust me. You're not going to trust in yourself to hold on to a second meal and think like, oh, maybe tomorrow it's not going to happen. Tomorrow the manna's not going to fall. No, you either trust me or you don't, which obviously is the only options. I don't know what happened. Like there is no or else. There's just the one option of you're going to trust me, because the manna would be filled with maggots overnight. And miraculously, on the Friday that they would grab 2 portions, that Saturday, it wouldn't happen. So this was like, there is no scientific explanation of, well, one of like bread materializing, the quail just waiting to be slaughtered, the water being, Moses hits the rock and water comes out. There's him putting his rod. I think that's the story, right? He puts his rod into bitter water and the water turns sweet. Like these things, like there isn't anything. And especially food going bad overnight, 6 days out of the week, and then on the Sabbath it doesn't go bad. Like there is no explanation. Sorry. Like that one, you're just going to have to go by faith. And obviously, and again, how did people live in the desert for 40 years and they tell this story, 80 years, and they tell this story and they're like, no, yeah, that's what happened. And that's how we lived. Because if it wasn't for that, we would have died of starvation in the desert. I mean, there was just no way. Like for the Israeli people to exist today, this had to have happened in some shape or form. Like, I don't, you know what I'm like? I don't know if I'm making that make sense, but to me, it's just like, hey, we're alive, and this is what we do today. This is our culture, and it's because this happened. And obviously, if people did escape the grip of Egyptian tyranny and went into the desert for 80 years, there has to be some truth, validity to it or something, like it's got to be real. Okay. But more on the rock being stricken, I think, again, this is symbology of Christ. And when we look at Numbers 20, Moses strikes the rock again, and there was disobedience there. And I think, again, it's that thing of like, hey, I had this analogy like planned out. It was going to be perfect, right? Which was going to be symbolic of Christ being struck, life being given as a result, and then you call him back. You call him, and he comes. Like, this is his second coming. He's not, he comes with a voice. The sound of a trumpet, right, is going to be the case in Revelations. But what we, because there's a bunch of little theories, right? Like, oh, he did it, like it was because of his anger. It was because of, his arrogance. It's because he trusted in the staff, like his faith was in the staff and this and that. No, I think it just ruined the analogy that he made. It was just disobedience. God wanted things to be a meticulous way so that we can have this analogy of Christ. And why I think this is simply because, oh no, it's escaped my mind. Let's see if I have it in my notes. Oh, and why it's not in my notes, but I remember it. The reason why I think this is because we get God's intention even when Moses disobeys, which I think is really interesting, right? Like, if I write my story, oh my gosh, thank you. God bless. Thank you. Okay, so if I were to write my story, I don't know if I would put my flaws in there like that. And you see that throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament, like, hey, this is how I messed up. And this was the intent. This was God's intention, and this is what I did. And there's the disconnect. That's crazy to me. And I think it speaks to like how much they trust in God to keep their reputation, to honor them. I don't know. It's just, I don't know what would make someone be that truthful in a holy book, I guess. Like I know that they are, because there's that embarrassment factor. And no offense, but like the Quran, there are some things, and maybe it's because at the time it was culturally acceptable, so no one bat an eye. But there's nothing like oh yeah, I got caught drunk with my pants down and my kids saw my nakedness, which I'm referring to Noah, right? Like, it doesn't really push the narrative in any sense. It just shows like, yo, you're kind of messed up like the rest of us, or you disobey, you have a complex like me. Like, I think in that facet it works, but like in the time, like when you're writing it, like what are you trying to achieve? If not, hey, this is just the truth, and like I'm just writing down what happened. So I don't know. Let's keep going. We got to keep it pushing, dude. I don't want this to be another 4-hour thing. But okay, so Sinai and the covenant. Okay, this is cool because oh my god, dude, sorry. Exodus 19, we see God tell them, "Hey, go to the base of the mountain. I'm coming down." Cool. Here, it's almost a reflection of it's a reversal of Babel, I would say, right? Instead of man building up like we've talked, God descends, right? This is also analogous, of course, of Jesus, right? Jesus being the only mediator, right? As Moses and Aaron are the only ones that go up the mountain to receive from God and come down, Christ is that mediator between God and man. There's no biblical precedence for this. There's nothing. It's just my imagination, my fascination. Imagining like the opposite of the transfiguration happening would be really cool. What do I mean? The transfiguration. Jesus goes up the mountain. He is glowing. He's like just dressed in whites. He looks like an angel. He's glowing, and they're like, what the heck? And then he sees Moses and Elijah there in some spiritual form thing, and they're consulting amongst each other, and they're talking, and the three disciples that watched, they're like, what the heck is going on? I wonder if like the opposite happened here, where Moses goes up and the pre-incarnation of Jesus, like glowing in all his in all his majesty, comes down to meet him and Aaron, and that's God descending down, right? That again, just an image that we can have of like, whoa, that's cool. There's nothing in the Bible that says that there's no hint of that. It's just like, I don't know, even if that's just an art painting of like, wow, that's Moses and God, fascinations. But yeah, okay, so he comes down with the 10 Commandments, right? No other gods, no idols, don't misuse God's name, right? And keep the Sabbath. These 4 laws are between you and God. Now, to me, what's crazy is, what's the difference between no other gods and no idols? We're going to get there, and I'll show you. Actually, it's literally quite next, but there's a difference here. And then the other 6, honor your father and mother, don't murder, don't commit adultery, don't steal, don't lie, don't covet. We look at these laws. I mean, look, I think there's this narrative too of like, oh, the Bible has so many rules and so many laws and this and that. And like, if I could just simplify it, it's like, hey, take care of yourself, take care of people, and just, don't be a jerk, essentially. I mean, it's like putting boundary, like, don't murder. Oh, dang it. So many rules. It's like, I don't know if anyone really has had the intention of murdering other than like psychopaths, right? So it's like, what are you really being bound to here, with rules? So after this, you have Exodus 21 through 23 that has some rules, and I understand it talks about slavery, and I think here's my whole position on this for now. When we get into Leviticus more details, we'll talk about it more. But just the fact that God does mention slavery already gives it more dignity than anyone else, than any other culture surrounding them. In the sense that like they have some protection, which is better than no protection and no mention, right? No regulation means you could do any kind of abuse, any kind of, whatever. And yeah, sure, you look at the rules and they're like, okay, fine. Yeah, you bust somebody's nose, they go free. But it's like, it should say, and you're thinking like, it should say, don't bust anyone's nose or you die or something. For now, I think just what's important here is that there is a demonstration of God's character, his justice and compassion, even for the lowest social class, which are slaves. I think also keep in mind this echo of Jesus saying about divorce, but I think we can apply that everywhere. This idea that because their hearts were hardened, because in the beginning it was not so. And as we've seen in Genesis, so far in Exodus, like God meets us where we're at. And he met the people of Israel where they're at. And where they are is in the middle of, I say barbaric, not in the sense of like, intellectually stupid or, like lacking laws and regulation. Just barbaric in the sense that like rape, murder, extortion, all of these things, that was the norm. You know what I mean? Having your way, using force, the survival of the fittest, the strongest is the best. That was just the law of the land. And so trying to take something out of that and like this is the precedent for modern thought and morality and ethics. Like it starts here. And I've talked about the monkeypox paradox, how essentially people took for granted the monkeypox vaccine that eradicated the disease in the first place. And they're like, oh, vaccines are bad, don't use vaccines. But like without the vaccines and whatever side effects, I'm not here to debate that eradicated it. And so in the same sense, like this was the start of it, of the reform of human consciousness started here. And you can't just throw it away and say, oh, this is outdated, ugly, and not. You have to look at this and be like, okay, there was a wisdom here that honestly still applies to this day. I mean, the amount of greed and abuse certain corporations have over their people. Like, yeah, sure. Like now I'm talking about utopian, everyone's equal in dignity and, everyone has a respectable wage and, can have vacations and this and that. Like, I get it. But that's exactly what I'm saying. It's like you can still use these laws and apply it to modern day, having the heart of the law here, modern day, and say there is still a lot of injustice. Using Leviticus, using, Exodus, saying, dude, you're going against the Old Testament. That's crazy to me, And so this whole thing of like, oh, the Old Testament is outdated. Maybe the letter of the law is, but not the spirit of the law. The spirit of the law, dude, we haven't budged. You know what? Let's just push it. Keep it pushing. We have the Tabernacle Instructions and empowered artisans. To me, this story is phenomenal. So then Moses gets a blueprint for the tabernacle, right? He gets a blueprint and God, so again, it's that obedience. He didn't ask how, he just asked to do it. This becomes very powerful because God empowers the how. God empowers Bezalel and Aholiab. He empowers Bezalel and Aholiab to do exactly what God asks for. And I think this is important to understand that God will capacitate you to do his will. All you have to say is yes. Again, answering that call, saying yes, knowing that you're not capable, you're not like, that's not your, what do you call it? Like your resume just doesn't hit the position. You know what I mean? Like you're just underqualified. You're underqualified. And God's like, you let me worry about that. Just say yes. The allegory here is that the spiritual gifts are given to build God's house. So they got the instructions and they got the people empowered to craft this thing. So they got the how, they got the what, got the when, they got the why. Well, maybe not the why, but they got what they need. Okay. And then the golden calf happens. There's this debated idea within the golden calf. And I say this because you first read it at first glance, the story is confusing. And I'll tell you why. Because they build the golden calf and then they say, let's go feast to the Lord. And you're like, what does that even mean? Like, I don't understand. So you build an idol, the golden calf, you're dancing, you're naked, you're doing debauchery. And then all of a sudden you're like, let's go sacrifice to the Lord. And you're like, did you just go back and forth? Like, didn't you just create the idol and say, this is the God that took you out of out of Egypt? And then you go to the Lord, though? That's weird. And so one theory, which I actually like a lot, is that they made an idol. Again, what was the first two commandments? Don't worship any other God and don't make an idol. They made a golden calf, and that represented God. This also goes back to this theme, going back all the way back to I am that I am. What I'm trying to say is that there is a way, like it's not just about who you worship, it's about how you worship. And you can create a false idol out of God. How? Again, by emphasizing certain things. It's totally fine to have a personality, like a part of God's personality that you love and you attach to. It's totally fine. But if that becomes his entirety, then it's not God anymore. If you put love on a pedestal, God is love, yes, but he's so much more than that. All of love fits into God, but not all of God fits into love. And you have to understand that. So saying God is love, well, one, you're probably worshiping your idea of love and saying that and calling that God. That's idolatry. That is the golden calf and saying, oh, this is the invisible God, a golden calf. And you're like, obviously when we read that, you're like, that's ridiculous. That why would you even do that? But we do that. God, being Christian is having family, and like as if you're Vin Diesel or something. No, it's not. It's so much more than that, right? And so it's these things of you put God in a box, you put God in this little thing, and that's what you worship, and it's idolatry, and that is idolatry. And so we have to be careful and allow God to be God. You know, he's his own person. He has his personality. He has his characteristics, I should say better. And he is his own person. And we have to respect that. He's not the extension of, he's not a projection of love. He's not a projection of justice. He's not any of these things. He's himself. He has his own character, and it's expressed throughout the Bible. And we have to understand the balance and the nuance of that. And we can't project anything inside of us to that. Again, it's not always who you worship, but how you worship. God is God, not just God is love, because that can be idolatrous. Moses intercedes and God relents. Now, Moses intercedes. This does speak to this idea of like how not that we bring out different facets of God's personality, but maybe in our expression, maybe in our understanding of God. And this is kind of where it gets paradoxical, right? I just said, let God be God, and God is all these things. But I think, like in me being creative, and me like being free-spirited, let's say, and borderline bohemian, right? I need certain things from God. It's the same sense of like a good parent is going to parent each kid differently based on their needs and their wants and their desires and like what helps them grow. There isn't a one size fits all for kids, and that is spiritual too, right? So God is going to treat me differently than he's going to treat John Bevere. How he's going to treat my wife, how he's going to treat Philip Anthony Mitchell. Pastors, they preach differently because they see a different facet of God. But the idea is understanding that this is just a facet of your intimacy with God and not a facet of all that he is. With all of that being said, Moses sees an angrier side, a more, not vengeful, but a wrathful God that has self-control, where, for example, Abraham had a real patient, like soft version of God. Although, I mean, the destruction was there regardless. Ironically, actually, the soft one destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, and Moses had the loud, boisterous, but had mercy at the end. Or like a calculated, cold judgment, which was them just grinding it up and drinking the gold. Wait, hold up. If at any point in this you said, hey, I never thought about it like that, please subscribe. What are you doing, man? I'm trying to pay my bills. Okay, anyways, let's get back to the serious stuff. All right, see it. And this brings us to Exodus 35, where there's this juxtaposition. So the first half of 35 talks about Sabbath. And the language is so severe here and so like strict that you have to have, man, some kind of compassion on the Pharisees, to be honest. Because like, how do you read that and not try to like make rules around the rules so you don't break Sabbath? I'd be so terrified of breaking Sabbath if this was like my context of, hey, this is Sabbath. It's something like you lift a finger, get stoned to death, you're cut off, I hate you, and you're just like, I don't want that at all, actually, and I'm not gonna let anyone do that. That's crazy. And then Jesus is just like, no, that's not the heart of it. And you're like, but where in the Bible could you possibly? And the issue here is, and that I'm learning because I'm reading through, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, and I'm going through and I'm just like, where does Jesus have the precedent to say what he says? Like, I actually don't understand it. Like, yeah, I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus. I believe he's the incarnation of God and he died for my sins. But I also don't see how he went from A to B, at all. And I think it's just because he's blending in the transfiguration. We brought it up. I think it's a perfect thing. It's the law and the prophecy. It's the law and the prophets combined gets to where he understands and sees. That's his vision. Yeah. Like you can't have one without the other. And so with just the law, you have this rigidity, but the prophets speak to the heart of God and not just the mind. Or I don't know if that's like it. I don't know if that analogy breaks down saying, like the law is the mind of God and the prophecy is the heart of God. That might just be an oversimplification, but it's something like that. It's like you need the two to get the full picture. And that's what Jesus had. And that's why his critiques were legitimate. But anyway, so the compassion, man, it's just strict. And you're like, what the heck? Okay. And then after that, he empowers, a lot of people, right? Not just Bezalel and Aholiab, but a bunch of people, and they are filled with the Holy Spirit to sow, to cast bronze and iron, gold, hammer things down, to put stuff together, construct, build. This is one of the first times that God fills people with the Holy Spirit to do something that wasn't spiritual, that was for non-religious work, I should say. And when I say non-religious work, I mean preaching, ministering, prophesying, any of these things. I want to bring that into real life for a second. We like brush over this idea like, oh yeah, you can work for God without like working for God kind of deal. I don't have to serve in the church. I can serve however. And we brush over that idea, but in our hearts, we're like, but I don't have the theology for that. I don't have scripture for that. I don't really understand like how it's true. I just live it. And I think a lot of that actually is why you kind of just make up stuff. You're like, this is common sense. And some things are common sense to you that are just dead wrong. And so we're like, yeah, that's biblical somewhere. It has to be. I don't like to live on that assumption at all. And so I have to find it. Here, we see exactly that. We see God empowering people to do work that isn't religious work. It's not being a priest. It's not prophesying. Again, it's not ministering. It's not being an evangelist. It's not doing church duties. It's you're building, you're sowing, you're doing all these ordinary things in quotation marks that actually do still glorify God. I think this is a blending of like, these are crafts and trades and maybe how they can serve the temple and serve God and all these things. I get that. Actually, I think that's maybe why, like the church my parents go to, my dad emphasizes this a lot of like when we have an event, everyone shows out to like help and they will help with everything. But in the mundane, it's like we don't have enough helpers. We don't have enough people to help. And I think maybe it's just that thing of not knowing how to translate my services, what I'm good at, what my heart is, into serving God, serving his temple weekly, daily, monthly, whatever the case is. Like, I don't know how this can translate to serving God all the time. It's only when my specific abilities are needed then. When we were remodeling the church, all the construction guys came out and were like, dude, I'm here to help. I'm donating hours to do this. You don't have to pay me. I'm here to work for the love of it. Those guys, they don't teach kids. They don't do any of these things because they're like, I don't see how I fit in that. I think it's completely appropriate in the sense of like, that makes total sense. I totally see that. And I don't necessarily know. I don't know if that's a thing of like having to train and understand like, hey, this is how your skills are transferable. Or it really is like, yo, when it comes to the church, certain people are only going to help in certain seasons because that's all they can do, and just being okay with that. But understanding that, like my dad and my mom. So my mom is a worship leader. My dad's a pastor, associate pastor, but they have their own businesses. My mom cleans houses. My dad is a contractor, and that's what puts food on the table for them. The idea of that being spirit-filled, right? The idea that God uses my mom to bless other people through cleaning, right? My dad, like fixing, restoring houses, him maybe creating a different a plan, not even with like the actual infrastructure of the house, but like of the furniture, and just making a home homely. Both of them actually do that in their own ways, right? Making a home like comfortable to be in, one with cleanliness, one with organization and order and structure, which is actually, I don't know, it's actually kind of funny when you put it poetically that way, because that's kind of how they are. But creating the environment to be hospitable, they both do that in a way, in a poetic way. That's actually so cool. The fact that like you have a gift and God has empowered you with that gift to serve people and to have purpose and to work, and that is spirit filled. And the juxtaposition here that we see is that God orders, commands rest and empowers you to rest, right? We talked about how God gave, hey, here's enough manna and quail and water for Friday and Saturday. Don't work on Saturday. So he empowers you to rest on Saturday. What that might look like is, hey, I've given you a job. I've given you, your everything. I've given you the ability to take one day off. Like this whole hashtag no days off, it's not biblical, bro. Rest. Your body needs rest. Your mind needs rest. More importantly, your soul needs rest. And God commands it. Yo, you're not going to live like again, not in a, I'm going to curse you if you don't, but in a, like, this is spiritual physics. This is physics. Like, your body needs to rest. You will get sick if you do not rest. Your mind, you will burn out if you do not rest. You will be bitter and angry if you do not rest. You will not be at peace if you do not rest, right? It's just, this is what it is. Not a curse. This is what it is. This is how you were designed. I can't go against the design. I'm just telling you like it is. Okay. So from that to, hey, I'm commanding work, and I'm also empowering you to do the work. So work and do the work that I've called you to do. And that goes for every layer, right? That when we talk about seeing our jobs as mission fields, when we talk about using our gifts and our talents, whether it's like a hobby way, like for example, the band, right? We don't have professional musicians serving at the church. They all have their own jobs, but they all have talents in music. And what do? They offer that. They use it. They work on it. They offer that to the Lord. And so, in the same way, you can have the gift of being a great friend, right? And a great listener. Use it. Put yourself in positions to listen to people and let them talk to you and let them open up to you. And like, just put yourself into the position that you can be used by God, because he's already empowered you and probably has already given you the command. Again, a huge theme. And I thank Judah Smith for this, and Mike Todd for this. But just the simple equation of Christianity is just to say yes. Say yes to God, say yes to his calling, say yes to obedience, just obey, right? And just see the adventure you go on from there. But that leaves us with the tabernacle being constructed, and it is constructed. So basically, like, when you read it, you think like, oh, he's just repeating the commands. No. It's emphasizing that they're doing everything by the T, because it's like mirroring exactly the instructions. And so you think, oh, why is he repeating the instructions again? He's not repeating the instructions. They're saying like, hey, this is supposed to be a 1/4 inch with, the drapes going 6.5 feet and da 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 da. And that's exactly what we did. We got the 1/4 inch, the 6.5 feet, and da da da. So it's just going step by step. We obeyed perfectly to the T. And that's the final message here of that. And now God can dwell among his people. Before, it was this weird spiritual, like, I'll meet you when I can kind of deal and talk to you, right? Freaking Abraham only talked to God like 3 times in his life, which, I mean, puts things into perspective, really. If you think like, oh man, Abraham, the father of faith, what he did, everything he did, talked to him maybe 3 or 4 times in his whole life. It's kind of crazy. That's a lot of silence. It's a lot of gap that we don't really see. And so, and I think, again, that is also reflective of our life in certain ways, where there's a lot of silence. There's a lot of gaps in our life. And obviously we're living through it, so it doesn't feel like a gap to us. But if we were to write our narrative at the end of our life, there's a lot of gaps. We would just say like, oh yeah, for these 6 years, I just put my head down and worked. And then, yeah. Okay. So that's that. And so that's how Exodus ends. Exodus ends with God tabernacling with his people. Finally, in the midst of his people. So long story short, he calls Abraham to become the nation that represents him, right? His seed will bless all the nations. He brings him out of his comfort zone into a land that he will show. He then has a bunch of kids. His kids have a bunch of kids, and it goes down and down and down. They end up becoming slaves of Egypt. God then brings them out of Egypt into the desert, and now he is with them physically. And we will talk about what that means to be with them physically, because it's actually a beautiful picture, like if you really put yourself in that narrative. But we'll get into that when we talk about Leviticus. Again, guys, some housekeeping. Next year is going to be a big year. I gotta say it. I'm gonna put the pressure on myself, but my goal is 12 albums in 12 months, and my podcasts are gonna reflect them in terms of ideas and thoughts that I just want to share and like kind of guide us through as we as we could listen to the album and experience and feel what I'm talking about, and then think about what I'm talking about. And so that's the goal for next year. I'm a little terrified because I feel like I don't have enough time to do it all, but this is what we're doing. So yeah, get excited for that. I'm excited and terrified because if it doesn't work out, I am a phony. But that's just the pressure I put on myself. All right, y'all have a blessed day. Thank you so much if you've been keeping up. This is it's fun, man, bringing the Bible to life, bringing it to what we can get out of it. And I'm just going to do this. Hopefully I'm going to compile these where I can finish the whole Old Testament by the end of the year. But if not, then sorry. But yeah, God bless y'all. Thank you so much. Y'all have a great night or day or whatever the case is. Okay, bye-bye. Hey guys, thank you so much for going on this journey with me. If you like the content, please like, subscribe, follow, and remember, there is more to life, and that is good news. Thank you guys so much. Have a great day.